Are we ready, folks? Good evening, viewers. I'm Rosemary and I'm Customer Services Librarian based in Motherwell. Thank you for tuning in to CultureNL Library's World Book Night speed dating sessions. It's a very simple format. Myself and 4 of my colleagues from the library service are each going to speak for a few minutes about a favourite book and why they think that would be your perfect book match. At the end, you'll be able to vote on screen for your perfect match. If you like to take time choosing your perfect match, the video will remain live on Facebook until midnight on Wednesday the 29th of April. And then we'll announce the winning book on Thursday the 30th. You can also submit questions to us, which we'll answer later. The colleagues who are participating in this are as follows. Russell, who's Digital and Support Services Manager. Judy is the Customer Services Librarian based in Airdrie. Hilary is the Open Learning Officer based in Motherwell. And Chris is the eServices Librarian. Now, we're going to get underway straight away, and Hilary is going to start. I'll hand over to Hilary now.
And I'm going to start with something from my lockdown read pile this evening. And quickly, when I realised this was going to happen, I went out and I got hold of my hands on a copy of Young Team by Graham Armstrong, one that I'd seen advertised for a while before and looked like something I thought I was going to enjoy, and might as well have that while stuck with a limited selection of books here. Comes with a bit of a warning though if you're going to date it. If I say that it's inspired probably by Trainspotting, and I think of a Trainspotting from the East meets Darren McGarvey's Poverty Safari from the West, somewhere in the middle of Lanarkshire, you'll get a feeling probably if you know either of those books, but the kind of warning that needs to come with it. This is not for the faint-hearted, and it's not for anybody who's easily offended either. It is fiction. And if you have grown up, like me, reading things like Dear Green Place and other stuff about the Glasgow Razor gangs in the 1920s and 1930s, or this age sort of Trainspotting and Poverty Safari kind of idea, then this is definitely one you need to get your hands on. It is fiction, but it is based on the author's experiences to an extent, or it draws on his experiences, I should say, because it's not autobiographical. But he started writing when he was coming off drugs as a way of keeping himself occupied. So it tells the story of William Williams, who is at the start of it about 14 and proud to be a member of the Young Team. And as it says, he's ready to smoke, to take the drugs, to drink the wine, and to fight. But more than that, he's ready to do what's important for him and his friends, because the gang's not just about these other sort of areas, it's about friendship. And in some ways, this is a coming-of-age story, because it takes him from 14 through to about 21, going up through becoming a member of the gang, getting the sort of ritualised introductions to gang life, to the stage where he's about 17 or so and it is completely out of control. And by the end of it, he's looking for a way out, wants to get out, but whether he can or not, well, who knows? But what I love about it is it's written by somebody who knows it, somebody who's been there, done it, and it really does come through quite authentically. It's gritty, it's harsh, it's real life. It's strong language, it's violence, it's drug use, it's poverty, but it's also about the mental health impact of it all. It's about the community, it's about the friendship, the bond that people need and look for in this kind of life, but they're wanting to belong. I can only paraphrase Azzy towards the end of it, because I'm not going to even try and do the Lanarkshire accent part of it. But the character basically says your character is defined by the choices you make, and the life you have is often the result of them. And that really is about what this is, that sums it up perfectly. You see the influences that people have, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And people just trying to get along, to be part, to be accepted, to deal with the mental health issues that come with it. And for something to come out of North Lanarkshire that deals with these from a male perspective, this is a must read. Particularly for me, it's a must read, and I'm suggesting this is the sort of thing. Who's this book looking for today? Well, I think if you find yourself working in these areas, if you know people in this kind of world, read it, because Armstrong himself talks about how somebody pointed him in the direction of train spotting, and when he found it, that made a huge difference. To me, somebody needs to read this. Somebody needs to know about it. And if you've read it and you know about it, then you can be the one that makes sure that somebody gets this just when they need it, because it's going to have the same effect as train spotting had on the author. Anybody who follows the work of the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, this is really important to read as well. So if you come into any of those categories, or you just fancy it, I'm going to suggest that you want to vote for The Young Team by Graham Armstrong. And it's definitely the most I think probably going to be the most challenging of dates that you could find this evening. So if you want something that's a little bit different, a little bit challenging, not all sweet and innocent, this is for you. And with that, I'm going to hand you on to Rosemary, our community services librarian, customer services librarian, based in Motherwell, who'll take you off on a different tangent.
Good evening, everyone. I have chosen something that is non-fiction. It's a memoir, and it is a book that was written by Melanie Reid. It was published last year. She is a former journalist with the Herald, and she now is a journalist with the Times. You may have heard of her. The book that she has written is The World That I Fell Out Of. And I'm going to try and show you this. I don't have a physical copy, but I've got a copy on screen. And I hope you saw that, but I'm not convinced. But it's to let you know that I think this is a wonderful read. It last year won the Salter Book Award for non-fiction, which is a very prestigious award in Scottish literary scene. Now, it is a story of a catastrophe that happened in her life. Her life was running along very well. She was a very successful journalist. She had a high profile. She was midlife. She'd family. She'd a lot of interests, and one of those interests was horse riding. In Good Friday 2010, she fell off her horse, and basically she was paralysed. And I kind of think there is a relevance to the current moment. That's a very random thing that happened. She was a very experienced horse rider. She knew exactly what she was doing. But something very random happened, and her life was never the same again. Because she was paralysed, she was taken to hospital straight away. And this book is introduced by Andrew Marr, and as most of you will know, a lot of people will know anyway, he suffered a catastrophe. He is also a major journalist, and he suffered a catastrophic act in his life. And he refers to, in his foreword, the randomness of catastrophic life events. And that is what this is, because she said if it had only been a millimetre of a difference as to how she fell, the end result wouldn't have been quite so awful. But when something terrible happens to you in life, it sometimes becomes, especially in a case like this where she went to hospital, she was paralysed, there sometimes is a limit to what they can do to help you. They can give you all the treatment in the world, they can give you all the physiotherapy in the world, but sometimes there are limitations to what they can do to help you. But you have to work your way through it, and you have to come to acceptance. What can I do? What can I not do? And while she was in hospital, she got a new perspective on people. She got a new perspective on the NHS. Although this is in parts could be a very dark story, it is saved by her gift for writing and her humour. She saw various characters in the NHS, and obviously she doesn't name them in the book by their real names. But there are some real characters, and she made new friends when she was in hospital, both amongst the patients and amongst the staff. She made new friends, people she would never have normally met in her life, and she was vulnerable and she was open to help. There are parts of the story that are really surprising that you wouldn't really think about. But our first visit home, obviously, that is a big moment in her treatment and recovery, and it was a big moment for our family. But the reality is, after she left hospital for that first visit home, she was terrified because she lived in the country. There was no easy help. She lived up in the Trossachs. Medical help couldn't get there quickly if she needed it. And also, from a family's point of view, they were kind of glad when she went back into hospital because they were terrified that they wouldn't be able to help her. And I think that is the kind of thing, until something really awful like that happens to you, you probably wouldn't think of these sort of unexpected impacts on your family. This is really an admirable. I mean, there's aspects of the story that are also quite funny. In one of her visits home, she got back on a horse and she hurt herself again. She fell off. Now, she just laughed about that because what else can you do? Because you would think the last thing she would want to do would be go on a horse. But in a sense, it had been so much of her life, she wanted back on a horse because by that time her fitness had improved. And Melanie is still in a wheelchair, but she gets around. She has an adapted vehicle. Her house has been adapted. She has learned to cope with what she was hit with. And I think that's what I take away from this story. There's two things I take away from it. A, her absolute gift for writing. She can tell her story. She does inspire you, but not in a sort of, oh, well, we can, no matter what happens to us, we can fight back. It's not a case of she fought back. She accepted the treatment that she was offered. She cooperated with the treatment. The treatment was, to a degree, it moved her life on. And she looked at her life as it was and seen how she could adapt it and what parts of her old life she could come back. And she is still a major journalist. She writes a spinal column in the Times every week. And this is really a very inspiring story. It's humorous, it's dark, and it's beautifully written, and I think it well deserves its award. And I think we all have a terror of something catastrophic and random happening in our lives. And this is a story of how somebody coped with it. I think this is an ideal read. It lifts your spirits, and I highly recommend it. I hope you will choose that as your match. Now, I am now ready to pass on to a colleague, and my colleague that I'm passing on to is Russell, who's Digital and Support Services Manager.
Hi there. Thanks, Rosemary. My book that I want you to consider today is called Fallen Angel by William Hjortsberg. And initially, you might be thinking, what is Fallen Angel? I've never heard of that. Who is William Hjortsberg? Well, you might not have heard of the book, but you may well have heard of the film of the book that was made out of the book. It was called Angel Heart, which I think was late 80s, early 90s. And it starred Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro and Lisa Bonet, and I think it was Alan Parker was the director. Quite a dark film with an awful lot of different issues that I'll talk about that come out of the book. The book is about a detective called Harry Angel, who runs the Crossroads Detective Agency, and he has a new client and a new challenge. He's been asked to track down someone called Johnny Favourite, who was a famous crooner back before World War II. But during World War II, Johnny was strafed in an air raid, and he was shipped home as a mental zombie and was lodged in a private hospital in upstate New York. Now, 16 years later, Johnny has disappeared. No one knows where he is, and it's a matter of vital concern to certain parties that they find Johnny as soon as possible. And Harry, Angel, has been employed to try and find Johnny Favourite. Harry is employed to find Johnny by a really interesting and dark and disturbing character by the name of Louis Cypher. We see Louis Cypher throughout the story, and every time we see him, there's something wrong, there's something dark, there's something mysterious, there's something concerning about this character. He just pops up in unusual situations. The whole story itself is incredibly atmospheric. It's really very well written, and you really do engage with the main characters, even though, like you probably heard already in some of the previous novels, the characters themselves are no angels, even though he's called Harry Angel. He's an alcoholic, he's a womanizer, he's a misogynist, and he's so much more than that. But you still root for him. You still want him to find Johnny Favourite and get to the end of this mystery. But the story itself twists and it turns constantly. And it's a real narrative on a number of issues, particularly mental health. And you question constantly what the state of Harry Angel's mental health is. It's also a commentary on racism, particularly in the Deep South in the 1950s and beyond. Part of the story is set in New York, but then the rest of the story is set in New Orleans. It's also commentary on domestic violence and violence in general, and significantly on religion and the occult. Religion and the occult run through the story constantly, and the author is questioning elements of religion all the time, and looks at the dark side and the impacts of different occults, particularly voodoo, has on human beings, and particularly some of the central characters. I don't want to give too much away because obviously I don't want to give you any spoilers, but I would very strongly recommend that you vote for this, you read this, or if you don't want to read it, get the book. Watch the film, or do both. Borrow them from the library. Borrow the book from the library, or get it online. It's quite cheap. I will leave you though with one thought. When I come back to the central characters and talking particularly about Louis Cypher and who he is and what he wants, I won't obviously spoil anything for you because at the end there's many twists, but there's a particularly significant twist right at the very end. So you'll have to read the book to find out what that is. But all I would say to you is keep saying his name, Louis Cypher, Louis Cypher, Louis Cypher, and speed it up, speed it up, speed it up. Put them together and see what you get. Might work something out. But so any book that's got a character like Louis Cypher in it, I think is worth a read. And any book that can start a chapter with Palm Sunday was slumberous and sensual, really seriously, has got to be read and taken seriously. So vote for Falling Angel. It's by far and away the best book you'll hear about today anyway. But it's really good. I'd rather recommend it. So now I'm going to pass over to Judy McGuire, who is our customer services librarian in Airdrie.
How do three sisters write a single suicide note? The same way a porcupine makes love, carefully. A Reunion of Ghosts by Judith Clare Mitchell tells the story of three sisters. They're called Lady, Delph, and V. Alter, all in their 40s and living together in their childhood home in New York in the last year of the 1990s. They describe themselves as a partnerless, childless, even petless sorority, consisting of one divorcee, one perpetually grieving widow, and one spinster. They're an almost impenetrable group, bound by love, tragedy, humour, and cocktails. Delph has a tattoo snaking round her ankle, which reads, "The sins of the fathers are visited upon the children to the third and fourth generations." These wealthy and eccentric sisters believe they carry the family's curse. Their great-grandfather invented Zyklon B, the gas used in Nazi concentration camps, ironically making possible the murder of millions of people, including most of their extended family. And the subsequent generations have suffered ill fortune and numerous sticky ends. As the fourth generation, they have a chart cataloguing the suicides of all the previous generations. Great-grandmother Iris, 1915, age 43, suicide, gunshot, her garden. Through grandfather Richard, 1945, age 43, suicide, auto-defenestration, the bedroom down the hall. To her mother Dally, 1975, age 46, suicide, drowning, the Hudson. Real historic figures are cast next to fictional ones. The sisters' great-grandfather is in fact based on real-life German Jewish scientist Fritz Haber. And Albert Einstein and his wife also make an appearance. Typical of the dark humour employed in this book is the tragic event of V's husband being murdered during a shooting, tempered by the fact that he was buying lunch at Chock full of nuts when it happened. There have been individual suicide attempts by the sisters. Lady attempts to hang herself in the basement of their apartment, but is saved by a rusty pipe and the sudden recollection that she has a stolen photograph of her lover's dog in her handbag. But now is their time. They've made a pact to die together at midnight on the 31st of December. It's the ultimate way of loving and protecting each other from the sometimes cruel and frightening outside world. To the reader, it's not about whether they do or don't commit suicide. It's about their story, the story that they call their suicide note. The story which will remain with you and will, against all the odds, make you laugh. So please do vote for A Reunion of Ghosts. Thank you. And I will now pass over to my colleague Chris Wilson, Digital Services Librarian based in Motherwell Library.
Hello guys, it's back to me now, over to me now. This is the novel that I am going to recommend to you guys. It is The Nowhere Emporium by Ross Mackenzie. I recently read this and it is a fantastic magical mystery story. The Nowhere Emporium that is mentioned in the story is a magical shop that can appear and disappear anywhere in the world basically, and at different times in history as well. The main character in this book is called Daniel Holmes, and he discovers the Nowhere Emporium when he is trying to escape some bullies in Glasgow. It is a children's book, and which makes it a little bit different from everything that we've had so far tonight. And he discovers it in Glasgow, and he runs inside the shop to escape from them. And inside he discovers the owner of the book, owner of the shop, and who is a magician called Lucien Silver. Now, Lucien is surprised when Daniel then returns the following day to the shop, because one of the secret things about the Nowhere Emporium is that normally once you've been to it, you don't remember that you have been in the past. However, Daniel did. So there's a little bit of mystery behind that, and you discover more about that as you read the book as well. Now, like all good stories, there is a rivalry in this one as well. Lucien has a past with another magician called Vindictus Sharp, and the both of them used to work together, but there is a major thing that happens in their past that leads them to kind of go in separate ways. And a major part of the story is that Daniel does have to discover what happened with the past and between the two, and it's a major section of the book. It's filled with fantastic characters, full of imagination all the way through, including Lucian's daughter Ellie, who is a very curious character and also very moody at times. But Daniel finds himself drawn to her all the time throughout the book whenever he meets her, and it's they discover a real nice bond in amongst them as well. The thing about the Nowhere Emporium is that it's not quite like a normal shop either, other than being able to kind of reappear and disappear all over the place. It's also not like a normal shop in terms of what it sells. It doesn't sell items like any regular shop. What it sells is wonders and experiences and imagination for people who visit. So it's literally a magical journey for anyone who pops by. It's a truly magical read. It's well worth reading for anyone of any age. It may be a children's book, but it is enjoyable for adults as well. And if you do fall in love with this book, you're guaranteed to be able to get future dates, because it's the start of a trilogy, and the final part of the trilogy is released later this year. So if you've enjoyed this one, look out for the other two parts and vote for this one as well. I think this is definitely the winner. So that's my sale. I hope you enjoy it if you pick it. We would kind of ask at this point, if you do have any questions, you can add them into the comment section. We don't have any just yet, but I will keep a wee eye on that and see if any come through. To vote for your favourite book, you can do so by following the instructions on the screen, by going to www.menti.com. There you'll get asked to enter a code, which for this poll is 214962, and that vote will be open until Wednesday the 29th at midnight, and we will reveal the winner of the overall best date on the Thursday following that. I would say that I hope you've had fun watching this, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your World Book Night, and don't forget to get involved with the national celebration, which starts at 7 p.m, which is using the hashtag reading hour, which is basically a chance to chat online about books in any fashion and just get involved in reading it in some way. So I'll kind of open up the mics for everyone else to kind of say a quick goodbye from everyone, and I've done my part. So good night from me, and bye bye from everyone else.
Good night, brilliant.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Enjoy your
Thanks for
book.
listening.
Bye. Thank you for viewing and listening.
Okay, bye guys for now.
Bye.
Bye.